Hello students, I am Sunil Ranjan and I am an English teacher. In this session, I am going to take up the chapter 3 questions that is from the book Honeycomb and it is for students of class 7. So it is here that I begin and I am going to tell you the story in very easy words and you will be able to understand them very well and you'll cheer up, I'm sure. So here I begin. There was a king. Once an idea came to him that he would never fail if he knew 3 things. The first was, what was the right time to begin something? The second was, what kind of people should he listen to? And the third was, what was the most important thing for him to do? The king sent his messengers throughout the kingdom and promised huge amount of money to the one who answered his 3 questions. Many wise men came to him and gave different answers. To the first question, some said the king must make a timetable. Some said it was not possible to do so. Some said he should do important things only, and some said he should have wise men to suggest him. Some said that urgent things required quick actions, so suggestions and actions would take time. Some said it was necessary to look the future, and only magicians could do that. To his second question, some said that he should listen to his counselors, meaning advisors. Some answered priests, some doctors, and some said the soldiers were the best. To his third question, that was, what was the most important thing for him to do? Some said science, some answered fighting, some religious worship. The king was not satisfied, so he gave no reward. Instead, he decided to meet a hermit, or you may say a saint, who was known for his wisdom, means good judgment. Now, when he was thinking about all these things, then he decided to go to the hermit. The hermit lived a very simple life in a forest. He did not go anywhere from there. He met simple people only. So the king put on ordinary clothes, reached the hermit's hut. He left his horse with his bodyguards and went on alone. He saw the hermit digging the ground in front of his hut. The hermit welcomed him and continued digging. As he was old and weak, he breathed hard as he worked. The king went to him and put his 3 questions. The hermit listened to him but did not speak and continued digging. The king told him that he was tired and asked to allow him to take his spade and work for him. The king gave him his spade and sat down on the ground. After digging 2 beds, the king stopped and repeated his questions. The hermit did not give any answer and asked the king to take rest and let him work. But the king did not give him the spade and continued to dig. Now, what happened after that? Hours passed, and when the sun was setting, the king stopped digging and told the hermit that he had come to get the answers to his questions, but he could not give him any answer. He would return home. Just then a bearded man came running towards them. His stomach was wounded and blood was flowing from it. When he reached them, he fainted and fell down. The king washed the wound and dressed it well until the bleeding man relaxed. So, the man felt better and asked for something to drink. The king gave him fresh water. The king and the hermit took the wounded man inside the hut and laid him on bed. As the king had become very tired, he had a deep sleep through the night. When he woke up next morning, he remembered everything that had happened the night before. He was surprised when the bearded man asked him to forgive him. Then the bearded man told the king that he knew him and wanted to kill him because the king had put his brother to death and seized his property. He knew that the king had gone to meet the hermit. He had decided to kill the king on his way home. But as the king did not return, he left his hiding place and came upon his bodyguard. The bodyguard recognized him and wounded him. He ran away from there. He would have died if the king had not dressed his wounds. Being grateful, he promised to serve him as his most faithful servant, and his sons too would do the same. The king felt happy that peace came so easily, and he had got a new friend too. He forgave him and promised to send his servants and his own doctor to look after him and give back his property. The king went out of the hut and saw the hermit sowing seeds in the beds that had been dug. He again asked the hermit if he would answer his questions. The hermit told the king that he had already got the answers. When the king looked surprised, the hermit replied that if he had not helped him the day before and had gone back, the man would have attacked him. So the most important time was when the king was digging his beds that kept him busy. At that time, the hermit was the most important man for him, and the most important time when he was caring for the wounded man, and what he did was the most important thing to do. So, you see, students, and now I am coming to the final point of the story. The hermit told him that the only time that is important was now, because it was then only that one had power to act. The most important person was the one with whom one was at a particular moment, as no one knew what would happen in future. And the most important business was to do the person good, as humans were sent into the world for that only. So here comes the end of the story, my dear. And now I am on to comprehension check. And so it is comprehension check number 1. There are other comprehension checks also. There are 2 comprehension checks. So I have named them 1 and 2. So the first question is, why did the king want to know answers to 3 questions? And the answer is, the king wanted to know the answers to 3 questions because he thought he would never fail if he knew them. And the next one is, messengers are sent throughout the kingdom to, fourth option is there, announce the reward for those who would answer the questions. So comprehension check 1 is over. And now on to comprehension check 2. So we have here, complete the following sentences by adding the appropriate parts of the sentences given in the box. And here I tell you, number 1 is, many wise men answered the king's questions, but their answers were so varied that the king was not satisfied. So this is the sentence. The next one is number 2. Someone suggested that there should be a council of wise men to help the king act at the right time. Number 3. Someone else suggested that the king should have a timetable and follow it strictly. And number 4 is, the king requested the hermit to answer 3 questions. And finally, number 5, the king washed and dressed the bearded man's wound, but the bleeding would not stop. So here comes the end of comprehension check 2. Now we have comprehension check over. Now working with the text, and we have the questions. So we have the first question, why was the king advised to go to the magicians? And the answer is, the king was advised to go to the magicians because it was necessary to look into the future, and only magicians could do that. So now coming to the next question, in answer to the second question, whose advice did the people say would be important to the king? And the answer is, in answer to the second question, people said to talk to his counselors, doctors, priests, or soldiers. Now, number 3. What suggestions were made in answer to the third question? And the answer is, in answer to the third question, the suggestion made were science, fighting, and religious worship. Now, question number 4. Did the wise men win the reward? If not, why not? And the answer is, no, the wise men did not win the reward because their answers were very different and the king was not satisfied, so he did not give any reward. Now we have another question that is coming here. So, how did the king and the hermit help the wounded man? And the answer is, the king and the hermit helped the wounded man by bringing him inside the hut, laying him on bed, dressing him and giving him fresh water. So, on to question number 6. And there are 2 questions here in number 6, and the first question is, who was the bearded man? And the answer is, the bearded man was an enemy of the king who had sworn to take revenge on him because the king had put his brother to death and seized his property. Now the second question, why did he ask for the king's forgiveness? And the answer is, he asked for the king's forgiveness because he wanted to kill the king, but the king had saved his life. Now question number 7. Here we have, the king forgave the bearded man. What did he do to show his forgiveness? And the answer is, the king forgave the bearded man. To show his forgiveness, the king promised to send his servants and his own doctor to look after him and give back his property. Now the 8th question. What were the hermit's answers to the 3 questions? Write each answer separately. Which answer do you like most and why? Now the answer is, to the first question, the hermit answered that the best time to do something was when there was need to do it. To the second question, the hermit answered to listen to the person facing him now, because it was then only one had time and the power to act. To the third question, the hermit answered that the most important thing for him to do was to understand the situation. So, and the other part of the question is, I like the first answer, that is now, because we are aware of the situation and have the power to act. So this is the end of the 8th question. Now, working with language. Now, you have to match items in list A with their meanings in list B. I repeat, match items in list A with the meanings in list B. Number 1, wounded. And wounded, against it, it must be severely injured. Wounded means severely injured. The second is awoke. Awoke, we have got up from sleep. That is against it. So you have to write that against it. Third is forgive. Forgive means pardon. Fourth is faithful, means lost consciousness. So you have to fill up lost consciousness. And the fifth is pity. Pity here means feel sorry for. Beds means small patches of ground for plants. And return means to give back. So now we have the sentences. Wounded, the soldier was wounded in the war. Awoke, my sister awoke very early today. Forgive, we must forgive and forget. Faithful, the old man has a faithful servant. Pity, we pity that handicapped woman. Beds, flowers have grown up in the beds. Return me my pencil and eraser. So this is the end of working with language number 1. And next we have Number 2. And in number 2, each of the following sentences has two blanks. Fill in the blanks with appropriate forms of the word given in brackets. Now, here we have the first, and I read it out for you. The judge said that only fresh evidence would make him change his judgment. Number 2. I didn't notice any serious difference of opinion among the debaters, although they differed from one another over small points. The third is, it is a fairly simple question to answer, but will you accept my answer as final? Number 4. It isn't necessary that necessity should always be the mother of invention. Number 5. Hermits are wise men. How they acquire their wisdom, no one can tell. Number 6. The committee has decided to make Jagdish captain of the team. The decision is likely to please everyone. And number 7. Asking for forgiveness is as noble as willingness to forgive. So, my dear students, this is the end of the chapter that I did it with you, and the chapter was 3 questions. That was from Honeycomb, meant for Class 7 students, CBSE English. So, thank you very much until we meet again.